Okay, Assalamu alaikum. Uh, we are going to discuss about Islamic movements and their contributions, especially in the colonial period, and their response to the modernity and the colonial uh, situations in India or all over the world. We most significant movements in Islamic movements in contemporary world, that is two movements. One is Ikhwan al-Muslimun, Harkat Ikhwan al-Muslimun. Second one is Jamaat Islami. Because both movements produced huge amount of intellectual works related to Islamic philosophy, Islamic political philosophy, Islamic economics, and the critique of socio-political order in the world. And they submitted Islam, they presented Islam as a system or way of life, and they introduced more interesting, amazing concepts to the discourse of Islamic philosophy. And when the Muslims community, they were facing many threats and challenges from this colonialism and these new isms of modernity or the outcome of modernism. So these movements and the scholars uh, of these movements, they defended Islam, they defended the society, Muslim community, and they presented counter attack to these isms, especially communism and socialism and modernity also. And in many parts of the world, these Muslim organizations became the warriors, the mujahideen against colonial powers also. The movements means there are many movements like Sufi movements in North African, West African countries, and in India also, like we discussed earlier about the movements of Tariqa Muhammadiyah of Shah Ahmad Shahid or Sayyid Ismail Shahid, and the movements of Chechenian movements, the Naqshbandi Tariqat leader Imam Shamil's movement against USSR attacks, means communist attacks. And there are many movements also across the world, and they fought against colonialism. Physically also, I'm saying about the war, I'm saying about the physical struggle, the jihad. They use the word the jihad against colonial power. But these modern movements, after the emergence of Ikhwan Muslimun and Jamaat Islami, they resisted this modernity and modernist ideas, these modernist concepts like new isms, socialism, communism, Marxism, and capitalism also. They resisted with new alternatives that derived from Islamic framework, Islamic ideology, Islamic perspective. These new alternatives presented by these modern movements actually produced good amount of scholars also in this area. So we have to discuss about this movement. One is the founder of Ikhwan Muslimun, Sheikh Hassan al-Banna. Hassan al-Banna, he introduced Ikhwan as a full-fledged movement. There is a famous quote of Shaheed Hassan al-Banna. He says Shaheed because in the Ikhwan Muslimun discourse, he was martyred or he was killed by the soldiers of Jamal Nasser in 1949. So he is known as Shaheed. Though then the Shaheed Hassan al-Banna is most famous personality in the Islamic studies or Islamic movements discussions. So Sheikh Hassan al-Banna introduced the new idea. new definition of the movement. Like he said that نحن دعوة سلفية وطريقة صوفية طريقة سنية وحقيقة صوفية وهيئة سياسية وجماعة رياضية وروابط علمية ثقافية وشركة اقتصادية وفكرة اجتماعية وشركة اقتصادية وفكرة اجتماعية. These are the most prominent terminologies that related to Islamic movement, means Ikhwan al-Muslimun. He said that we نحن دعوة سلفية, we are Salafi preaching, we are Salafi da'wah. Here Salafi means not the Salafi movements. Salaf means the da'wah or the call of Salafus Salihin. That was meant by da'wah Salafiyya. Tariqa Sunniya means we are a path of Sunni path. We have a Sunni path, means either Sunni means here Sunni means the tariqa of the path of Ahl Sunnah. Okay. Then Haqiqa Sufiya, we are reality, the Sufi reality. He combined the Salafi Sufi in one sentence. That is the most peculiar factor in this definition. And Hay'a Siyasiya, Ikhwan, this movement is a political body. Hay'a means body. Jama'a Riyaliya, this it's a dynamic movement. Jama'a, a dynamic organization. And Rawabitun Ilmiya Thaqafiya, it's a cultural, intellectual, educational group, wing, it's a circle. Sharika Iqtisadiya, it's a group of, it's an economic group, means Ikhwan Muslims also promotes the economical idea, economics system. So we will discuss about the Sheikh Hassan Banna said that we will discuss about the economic system of Islam also. And it's a fikra ijtimaiya, it's a social thinking, it's a social thought also, because Islam is a communitarian, Islam is a collective, Islam is all about collectivity, connectivity and communitarian also. So Ikhwan Muslimun, it's a fikra ijtimaiya, it's a social thought also. This was the most prominent definition of a movement. It's a full-fledged movement from Sheikh Hassan al-Banna. So after this Sheikh Hassan al-Banna's death, means the assassination or the martyrdom, Sayyid Qutb became the main proponent ideologue of the Ikhwan al-Muslimun, and he wrote a tafsir fi Dhilal al-Quran. His work is Al-Adala Ijtimaiya fil Islam, the justice, the social justice in Islam, and his Taswir al-Fan fil Quran, the arts in Quran. And there are many works also related to written by Sayyid Qutb, and he criticized the society in the perspective of Islam. He always used the justice. Through this idea of justice, he criticized the ruling parties and ruling social order of Egypt particularly and Arab world generally. And he used the Jahiliya concept also, because Jahiliya concept always related to we when we discuss about the Jahiliya concept, we always connect this Jahiliya concept to the pre-prophetic era. Actually, Jahiliya means ignorance. The ignorance always exists. So ignorance related to social order, related to the power, related to the religious sphere, related to the cultural sphere. There are many type of jahiliyat still existing in the contemporary era. This is how Sayyid Qutb interpreted the jahiliya in Egyptian society. So the concept of jahiliyat also was another discussion done by Sayyid Qutb at that time. And he discussed the modernity and the outcome of modernity and the blind imitation of modernisms and modernization and secularization process in Egypt and especially and in the Arab world also generally. So he and his brother Muhammad Qutb also. Muhammad Qutb was a prolific writer. He period he came to Saudi Arabia, and he was one kind of new type of Islamic movement that emerged in Saudi Arabia, that is Sahwa Salafiyya or Sah Islamiyya. That was amalgam of Ikhwani ideology and Salafi methodology. Now Salman al-Auda, the new leader who is in prison, is the student of Muhammad Qutb in Saudi Arabia. So, in Saudi Arabia or in different part of the world, Ikhwan al-Muslimun became the strongest voice of Islamic perspective against modernity or the modernization process or new ideas of modernity like secularism, socialism, and this communism, Marxism, whatever it is. All these isms were criticized by Ikhwan Muslims intellectuals in different part of the world. So Ikhwan Muslims contributions is starting from Hassan al-Banna's definition of Ikhwan or Hassan Banna's definition of Islam and Sayyid Qutb's contribution in ideological sphere, and from that the many scholars they were influenced by these scholars in all over the Arab world, and they defended Islam in the same manner. That was the most significant factor. Still, they are continuing in these all these spheres also. And now we have to discuss about the Jamaat Islami. We all already discussed about Jamaat Islami in and their contributions, how they emerged in the colonial India, and what was their main intentions when they established when Maududi and other co-workers established Jamaat Islami, and how they established Jamaat Islami. We already discussed about that because that was the colonial period, that was British imperialist period, and the modernization and secularization process influence in Muslim intelligentsia, Muslim academia, and there was a need for revival in religious sphere also, socio-political sphere also. So the necessity of revival in all the spheres of Muslims, fields of Muslim life. So because of this necessity, all these movements came to existence. We have to consider that idea in this discussion. So Maududi, Sayyid Maududi, he himself was the part of Sufi Tariqat, because the Maududiya Tariqat is a sub branch of Chishtiya Tariqat. His great great grandfather, his known was Abul Ala Maududi itself. This Abul Ala Maududi came to India in 16th century, and this Sir Sayyid Ahmad Khan was a paternal uncle of Maulana Maududi's father. So that was the connection of Maulana Maududi, and he was a Sayyid, means he was from Ahl Bayt family, and he has a connection of Sufi Tariqat. Like same way, Shahid Hassan Banna was a murid of Hasafiya Tariqat. That was a sub branch of Shaduli Tariqat in Egypt. So all these movements, all these founding fathers of new movements have some kind of connection with the Sufism also, because Hassan al-Banna used the idea of Sufism in the movements, but Maulana Maududi or Sayyid Ala Maududi was so critical towards the Sufi ideas, because in Indian subcontinent Sufism because caused some kind of stagnation in Muslim society. So he was so critical to the Sufi ideas, and Maulana Maududi he was a historian. He wrote many works. He write the history of Islam. He wrote history of Khilafat or Mulukiyat. That was the most classical work. Khilafat or Mulukiyat. He wrote about Seljuki's history. He wrote about Indian history, Indian freedom struggle, like Mahatma Gandhi's work, Madan Mohan Malaviya's life, and Indian freedom struggle, and the Deccan areas, Hyderabad and Deccan areas history, and he wrote many other history works also. And he was a mufassir. His tafsir is Tahfim al-Quran is the most prominent modern tafsir in this contemporary era, and he was a mufti also. He has a good amount of works related to fatwas, Rasail or Masail. That is the most prominent work, and he is an independent faqih. He always discuss about the independence. He was a Hanafi faqih, but still he he attempted to be free from this the circle of Hanafi school of thought, and he was a critical to the modern religions also. There is a special space or a special place in his tafhim, in his tafsir related to the Christianity and Judaism also. He has wrote a work also. He has written a works about Judaism and Christianity. That is a special work related to the comparative religion. And Maulana Maududi criticized all these modern isms. There is a interesting factor in his life. He predicted the decline or failure of Marxism. He predicted that the Marxism will fail in Moscow street art itself. He predicted that because that was even before the decline or failure of collapse of USSR. So, and he has discussed about democracy. Somehow he presented new idea, theodemocracy. That's a controversial factor in the Islamic political philosophy. So that's another discussion. Still, that was a continuity of the Islamic political philosophy, starting from Prophet Muhammad to Kindi and Farabi, Ibn Sina, Ibn Rushd, Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Khaldun, and there are many scholars in Usmania Khilafat, and especially Ibn Arabi's philosophy related to the Tawheed and the Khilafah. All these ideas can be seen in the works of Maulana Maududi's political philosophy. He also discussed about the movements like movements of Sarhindi and movements of this Muhammadiyya Tariqa of Shah Ahmad Shahid and Sayyid Ismail Shahid, and movements of Shah Walida Dahlavi. He criticized and he mentioned very carefully also their contribution in Islamic philosophy too. So there was a good comparison between Maulana Maududi and Shah Walida Dahlavi's political philosophy, because Shah Walida Dahlavi put forward the irtifaqats that is started from person, means the individual, and the family, and the city, and the state, or daulats. That was the political philosophy of Shah Walida Dahlavi. But at the same time, Maulana Maududi presented his idea starting from personality, family, society, and the state. There was a little bit different between Shah Walida Dahlavi and Maududi Sahib. That's the difference of city and the society. Maulana Maududi discussed about the society's position in the political philosophy. At the same time, Shah Walida discussed about the city's position in the political philosophy, because he was a Delhi, and the Delhi was a center of this Mughal dynasty. So Delhi is the capital of Mughal dynasty. Delhi is the central of all type of political transactions. So he used the city in his political philosophy. But Maulana Maududi used the gradual growth from the individual to the family, to the society, and to the state. That is the bottom-up theory of political philosophy of Maulana Maududi. At the same time, he discussed the static-centric political philosophy also. after the establishment of a state, the state must deal like that. So he discussed very deep discussion. He did very deep discussion in the state-centric ideas also. And Maulana Maududi discussed about the economic system, and he did. He was a practical philosopher too. He is not just a philosopher sitting in the room. He did protest against the society, against the ruling power. He tried to change the ideas and laws according to his philosophy. That was his whole life. So all these ideas, Maulana Maududi was totally aware of the influence of modernity, colonialism, and colonial captivity, mental captivity in the Muslim society. He used his intellectual capacity to defend Islam and Islamic perspective in this special occasion. And the next one, his mentor, Maulana Maududi's mentor, that was Allama Iqbal, Muhammad Iqbal, Sir Muhammad Iqbal. Muhammad Iqbal was some kind of mentor of Maulana Maududi. When Muhammad Iqbal is thought to found a Islamic institutions, Darus Salam, he summoned Maulana Maududi, the young scholar of at the time, Maulana Maududi, to be a chair of this institution, Darus Salam. That was the connection of Maulana Maududi and Allama Iqbal at that time. This Allama Iqbal was the pioneer of reconstruction of Islamic thought. He tried to reread the Islamic philosophy. He was a poet philosopher. He discussed all Islamic philosophy, political ideas through the prism of poetry or through the prism of prose also. So, and he was a practical political philosopher also. He presented new solutions for the Muslim community in Indian subcontinent. So he became the national leader of Muslim community also at a time. So Allama Iqbal's idea also very significant in these ideas. Allama Iqbal have seen through his own ideas the decline of Muslim society. He very broad area, and he reached Spain also in Cordoba, and he wrote poems about the Cordoba or the Cordoba or Spanish Muslims situations, and he wanted to revive the idea of Muslim Ummah and to learn the lessons from this collapse or decline of Muslim society that was bygone in the past. And he was totally against, as we there is the interesting work, that is a reconstruction of religious thought, is the most important work of Allama Iqbal. We must read to know more about his critique towards these modern ideas and colonial captivity of Muslim intelligentsia or academia of his era. And from all these discussions, we have to discuss about the new idea, that is Islamism. To my perspective, in my perspective, Islamism, it's a synthesis of a cluster of negative connotations. When we use Islamist, all Islamic movements coming under one basket. We use Ikhwan Muslimun, Jamaat Islami, all other militant also, and they are putting all these movements into one basket. Actually, they are totally different. Ikhwan Muslimuns totally different. Ikhwan Muslimuns, many branches in all over the Arab world, they are totally different from each other. And Jamaat Islami is different movements in Pakistan, Bangladesh, Kashmir, and India also. Kashmir, there is a totally different from Indian Jamaat Islami, and Kashmir Jamaat Islami totally different from Bangladesh Jamaat Islami, and there are Shii political movements also called by this name Islamist. like Hezbollah or Ansar, or there are many movements from Shiite community. All are known as Islamists. So, and there are many Sufi organization also, like in here. Turkey, then AK Party and AK Party's successors movements all are related to Sufi organizations. AK Party is not a Sufi organization, but Naqshbandi Tariqat was the main backbone of AK Party. So now the Islamist word also used for these Sufi movements also. So we have to distinguish the idea of Islamism. So this is why. And another important factor is the Islamism word is a used for everything. There is a idea of backwardness, and they say Islamist means regressive. Islamist means aggressive, militant, and backward. The scholars of or advocates of backwardness, or advocates of militancy or violence, or advocates of suppression of women rights. So all these idea comes under the word of Islamism, and there is another idea. The Islamism means they think that Islamism is only related to the socio-political engagement. No, all these movements have full-fledged activism in the Muslim society. Like Ikhwan Muslims, as I said before, in their religious perspective, they are also discussing about the religious fields also. Like in their definition, Dawa Salafiyya or Haqiqa Sufiya, or all these discussion also included in Islamic movements. But the Islamism word always used for the socio-political engagement. That's not correct in regard to these all movements. So we have to understand the idea of Islamism correctly, and the Islamism is a product of this modernist discourse, and they project all these movements who discuss about the lack of socio-political awareness among the Muslims. They named these movements are Islamist. Some movements were totally against this colonialist power. Then the intellectuals or scholars from colonialist power, they named all these movements who were struggling against the colonialist attempts. They named them as Islamist. So all the idea related to Islamism must be reconsidered, must be reread. So that is most significant factors that I have to discuss in this discussion. Thank you.